Most everyone grows up hearing urban legends and ghost stories, hearing that the house at the end of the street is super haunted and every kid on the block is ding dong ditching it every Halloween. Some people even have their own experiences of things they just can't explain. But what we don't always hear about are the stories behind the story. What events and evidence are keeping the story alive for decades to come? What actual events support the stories and what's just made up? I'm Cassie, and welcome to Behind the Haunt, where I take you on deep dives of these legends and ghost stories, separating fact from fiction and the just unexplainable. This week, we're going to be covering the story of Bunnyman Bridge and the Bunnyman of Clifton, Virginia. It's one that I actually grew up hearing. It's actually the first one that I grew up hearing, and it's what got me into the paranormal and the unexplained. There is a trigger warning for this one. There are mentions of child death and animal mutilations. If that's not something you want to hear about or can hear about, just skip it. Come back next week. There'll be a different story. For those of you who are staying, here's the legend, or one of the versions of the legend. This version comes from Ali Schweizer of WAMU Radio that aired October 31st of 2017. Ali met up with a fellow journalist, Matt Blitz, and this is the retelling of the version he heard growing up. In 1904, there was an asylum not far from this bridge. Clifton residents didn't like the idea of mental patients near their new homes, so they got it shut down. All the patients were taken by bus to Lorton Prison. Then the bus swerved and crashed. Blitz said they were able to locate all the inmates that were on the bus, except for one. The escaped mental patient was named Douglas Griffith. After the crash, he disappeared. Weeks passed. Rabbit corpses began appearing in the woods. Douglas was apparently eating them to stay alive. And this went on for a while. Then, one Halloween night, a group of kids were hanging around the bridge. They reported seeing some sort of bright light or orb. And then, in a flash, they'd all been strung up, just like the bunnies, gutted and hanging from the bridge. The missing mental patient, Douglas, was, of course, assumed to be the killer. And the rumor goes if you come here on Halloween night at midnight, you'll end up just like those kids and those bunnies. Now, that is one version of the story. There's multiple different variations. Some variations say the bunny man actually goes into homes and kidnaps children. Some say he doesn't actively attack anyone and he's just chasing people and appearing. And then some people say it was a train derailment and not a bus crash. But what supports this? So, starting off with a little bit of history of the area. In the late 1700s, Clifton was just sparsely settled farmland with about 1,200 acres, including Pope's Head Creek, that all belonged to William E. Beckwith. In 1852, the O&A Railroad between Alexandria and Manassas was completed, and between 1861 and 1865, the railroad was used for transporting supplies to the Union Army. In 1862, Beckwith had passed, leaving no heir to take on the property, leaving it just up for grabs for anyone who wanted it and could afford it at the time. In 1863, the Union Army built Devereaux Station, and in 1868, Harris Otis comes in and purchases land parcels. In 1868, the name also changes to Clifton Station. In 1894, Southern Railway System is formed, and in 1902, Clifton is incorporated as a town. In 1958, Southern Railway Depot is demolished, and in 1970 is the first documented existence of the Bunny Man. And so, Bunny Man Bridge, home of the Bunny Man, is located in Clifton on Colchester Road. The bridge itself is a railway overpass that was a part of Southern Railway System, and the specific spot on Colchester Road that goes under this bridge goes down to a single lane where only one car can pass at a time, and it is now a residential street. And so on either side there are homes, and it is a dead end cul-de-sac situation at the end. And so, who's Douglas? Who is this infamous Bunny Man in various versions of the legend? Um, it's claimed that he slaughtered his entire family on Easter, and that's how he got incarcerated to begin with. And some claim that he had killed another inmate that had escaped with him the night of the bus crash. But what else is there? Do we have a cool backstory? Are there other crimes? Did he ever get caught? Well, outside of the legend, there's no record of him actually ever existing. But we still have the legend that first appears in 1970 in the news by the Washington Post. October 22nd, 1970, the Washington Post posts a story called Man in Bunny Suit Sought in Fairfax. And so, in this news article, it states Fairfax County Police were looking for a man who likes to wear a white rabbit costume and throw hatchets through car windows. There was an Air Force cadet named Robert Bennett who says after midnight, he and his fiancee were sitting in a car on the 5400 block of Guinea Road when a man dressed in a white suit with long bunny ears ran from the nearby bushes and shouted that you're on my property and I have your tag number. The rabbit threw a wooden handled hatchet through the right car window, and as soon as he threw the hatchet, he just skipped off into the night. The cadet and his fiance were not injured, and the police say that they have the hatchet, but no other evidence. Bennett said, Bennett, the Air Force cadet, said that they were visiting an uncle who lived across the street from where they were parked, and they were in the area to attend the Air Force Navy football game. Not even 2 weeks later, October 31st of 1970, the Washington Post again runs another story. This one was called The Rabbit Reappears. And in this one, again, a man wearing a furry rabbit suit with two long ears is seen again on Guinea Road in Fairfax County. Police report this time he's wielding an axe and chopping away at a roof support of a new house, a newly built house. And it reiterates the story of the Air Force cadet, and then jumping into the most recent report. Um, a security guard for a construction company said he saw a man in a rabbit suit standing on a porch of a new but unoccupied house. And when the security guard started speaking with the rabbit man, um, the man started chopping away at the house. And the rabbit stated, "All you people trespass around here." And also threatened, "If you don't get out of here, I'm going to bust you on the head." The security guard walked back to his car to get his handgun, but the rabbit carrying the axe just ran off into the woods. The security guard said the man was about 5'8", 160 pounds, and appeared to be in his early 20s. And one note about this one is we got a little bit more of a description on the suit. So it's described as gray, black, and white. So in the first one, he was holding a hatchet, and now it's a long-handled axe, and still aggressive, attacking people, or at least threatening. And then that's the end of the news reports until we jump to 2018. And so April 18th of 2018, Peggy Fox of WUSA 9 News ran a story not directly about the Bunny Man, but he is mentioned. There was a man found dead in Fairfax County. So, April 18th, just before 7 a.m., a resident of Clifton on Colchester Road found a body about 900 feet from the infamous Bunny Man Bridge. Police identified Michael Cooker, 30, of Herndon, as the deceased. It happened right in front of the bridge on Colchester Road, and responding units pronounced him dead at the scene and noted upper body trauma. Investigators were interested in what was found in the embankment, where the crime scene photographer took a lot of photos. Residents of the area didn't have a lot of information other than there was a body found. No connections have been made between the apparent homicide and the legend that started in the 1970s. But I did dig a little bit deeper into this incident, and one note was there was a Smith Wesson revolver that was found near the body. And essentially the overall consensus of this crime, it has been solved and closed, but it was essentially a drug deal gone wrong, is what the official police reports have. But I did find it interesting that a Smith Wesson, that was a common use of the Union Army during the Civil War, was found. Further official reports that um, are acknowledged. This comes from Brian Conley. He's a historian and archivist that works at Fairfax County Public Library, and he got interviewed for a story called "The Bunny Man Unmasked." And so, officially, there's no record of the October 18th assault on Bennett and his fiancee. So that first story that the Washington Post had ran, there's no official record of it ever happening or getting reported to police. There was some base to the October 31st news article where there was a case for destruction of property, but nothing about a man in a bunny suit involved. And then a man, W.L. Johnson, at the Criminal Investigation Bureau, took charge of the Bunny Man case because he kept popping up in the news. And around October 31st of 1970, Johnson had received an anonymous call from someone claiming to be the Axeman, saying he was upset that his property was getting messed up. And there was a setup to meet with the caller. The caller never arrived, never showed. And so that didn't pan out for finding out who the mysterious bunny man is that round. November 4th of 1970, Johnson received a call from a resident of the area informing him that her son claimed to know the identity of this bunny man. He interviewed the son, who is 8, and it was found that the son had actually not met the bunny man, but heard about him from other kids at school. Johnson went on to interview other neighborhood children, leading to similar results. So the story was already going around, getting passed on amongst the children. March 14th of 1971, Johnson summarized the case of the bunny man as unsubstantiated. Only witnesses are young children and the original case complaint. The case has been marked inactive. Oh my God. So, where does this leave us? There is no conclusive evidence of an insane asylum ever existing. There is the Lorton Reformatory, but it wasn't established until 1910, and it closed down in the late 1990s with the final inmates transferred out in 2001. And in the original story, this was all starting in 1904. And officially, no crimes can be linked to the Bunny Man. But also remember, we do have the slight note that there was a revolver that was found with the deceased, the one official deceased body that, not the one, but we can note that a Smith Wesson was found with the body that was discovered in 2018 right by the bridge. And that will tie in later. As far as the train derailment story, it's said to have happened in the 1940s or 50s, changing the timeline of the whole legend again. The only train derailment in the area was a passenger train on January 11th of 1947, but that was at Burke Station, and it had one fatality of a bystander, and there were injuries to 38 passengers and 8 dining car employees. Not exactly set up for transporting inmates. So, no setup for transporting inmates in that one, and I have not been able to pull any conclusive information about a bus crash in the area. Um, but none of these stories involve anything about children or children being harmed by this elusive bunny man. But One thought I did have, and I would like to note that I'm not saying that, oh, it's the bunny man who did this, but a thought of how children got pulled into the legend. There are some cold cases from the 1970s where there was a Patricia Moore who was 10 years old when she was abducted from the Clifton area where she lived. On July 15th of 1970, the date of her abduction, her remains were discovered in a wooded area near Old Colchester Road in Prince William County on October 10th of 1970. And then there was a John Doe, approximately 3 to 6 years old, who was found in Massey Creek, that's near Colchester Road Bridge in Prince William County. The child has not been identified. He was found on June 13th of 1972. It is confirmed that Patricia was from the Clifton area, and although they were both found near Colchester Road, Prince William County, and not Colchester Road, Clifton, it's not a far stretch to see how they got pulled into the Bunny Man story, um, especially with there being so many streets that have the same name. It was just a different county. And so that's my thought on how kids even got pulled into the story. But what about these other experiences? So there's a gentleman, Don Oldenburg, who wrote in a story for the Washington Post on October 31st of 2003. He interviewed multiple different people that had experiences with this bridge and Bunny Man. There was Angie Prophet, who was 14 in the 70s when her and her boyfriend went to visit the bridge. They parked near the bridge. She states she saw two children at the tunnel opening. She was watching them when they just disappeared out of her sight. And seconds later, they were at the back window of the car looking at her. And she believes the children were victims that had died there. There was Steve Sucher, who used to drive by on his commute home from work. He would keep his windows up, the roads poorly lit, narrow, and curvy, and it makes people nervous to drive on to begin with. But Steve would get a feeling of dread. He's a paranormal research hobbyist who doesn't buy into the Bunny Man story, but he does get weird vibes in that area that he just can't explain. And then downtown Clifton residents generally don't believe the story. They treat it more as like a made up legend, but some will play into it around Halloween, just not fully wholeheartedly believing it. There was also a paranormal investigation that I found the video of, um, by Virginia Paranormal Investigation. Jeff and Linda from that group had stopped by the overpass. And in the beginning of the video, when they're driving there, Jeff is telling one of the iterations of the legend that he had heard. And when they arrive there, Jeff notes that there's an eerie feeling. They drive through the tunnel a couple of times, not getting out because it's late at night when they went and it's a residential street. Jeff and Linda left the overpass with no evidence of activity other than it just feeling creepy. They did note that the only action of sorts that they saw was from a medical emergency down the road. And then another gentleman, Michael J. Varhala, I believe he wrote a book, Ghost Hunting Virginia. He had written of his experience where him and his friend Jeff went the night of June 3rd, 2008. He described getting turned around a bit at first, not really having any feelings of eeriness or anything until they were back on track, pulling up to the overpass or underpass. They turned around and parked on the other side. They both get out. Michael had his camera. Joff did a three-name incantation where they were saying the bunny man three times. Um, Michael notes that when he sees people doing them in movies, he thinks it's kind of stupid, but he doesn't really clarify if he thinks it's a stupid idea to invoke a spirit or if he thinks the whole idea of it is just stupid. Um, Michael had his camera out and began taking photos as Joff was doing his incantations. They were looking into the tunnel. They did see a glow of a light, followed by a Crown Vic with blue lights. It was a county cop that had pulled up, making sure they weren't causing any trouble because it is a residential area. Just told him to stay off of people's private property and off of the embankment. And so the county officer leaves and they finish up what they were doing. Um, Michael gets a couple shots in before, or he gets into the car, but he does note that just as he was stepping in, he heard a branch snap to the left of them. And so he's half joking, like, I think we've overstayed our welcome. And other than it feeling creepy, there was no other sense that the bridge was haunted. Michael gets home around 11:30 that night and starts uploading the photos that he had taken. And so, of the 54 photos he had taken that night, 23 looked as if there's just pictures of the dark. The other half looked as though there could be something to it, but he's not sure. But there were two that stuck out to him. One taken from the north end of the tunnel, shown at the very left of the entrance, a very clear, solid looking, pale blue green orb of some sort that is frequently taken by ghost hunters to be a manifestation of spiritual energy. The other was even stranger. It was the last shot he had taken from the south end of the tunnel and showed a whole array of orbs in a variety of sizes that looked as if they were converging on the spot where he was standing. Michael zooms in on the orbs in the last photo and notes one looks a little bit different than the others and kind of gives him the creeps. He decides to show his wife, Diane, the next morning. He's showing Diane. Diane clearly states that it's an orb, but when he zooms in, they realize it's a face. In the photo, the face appeared to be 10 or 12 feet off the ground and about the size of a human head. Had all the human features, ears, nose, mouth, and that's the creepiest photo. And that's all that he really wrote about that specific experience. Now, for me, I have gone to this bridge a couple of times. The first time was I was a senior in high school trying to go, and the cops told us no, the road was shut down. Also, what's going on Halloween? Whether or not they have it shut down specifically because of a belief in the legend, or if they're just shutting it down to keep teenagers from being stupid and scaring other kids. I don't know. I wasn't allowed to go. Um, but they shut it down every year. And so the second time was later that year and was completely by accident. Me and my brother were on our way home and we our usual route was blocked off by a crash. And so we had to go through Clifton to get home. And it was late and our GPS was being slow at loading and we ended up in front of the bridge. We were more freaking out because we didn't know if his Mustang would be able to fit or if we would even have a spot to turn around on the other end because we had never actually been there before. We did make it home eventually. And then the third time I've gone was more intentional and figured out how to turn around on the other side. It's creepy. I didn't see anything, but I also didn't stick around long because it was also late, trying not to have the cops called on us by residents that are reporting a suspicious vehicle. And so I it's a creepy place for sure. I just haven't seen anything myself. And so is the bunny man real? That I don't know. But there's definitely something to that area that gives an overall creep factor to everyone. And maybe it's not the bunny man, but a Civil War ghost because like I said, there was the Smith Wesson that was found with the body of 2018 who uses a revolver for a drug deal gone wrong. And seems a little bit odd, but that's your choice, I guess. Um, but Clifton is full of history and old buildings, so even if it's not the Bunny Man, there could be something else that's in the woods or in the area. Um, and it's a really beautiful area with small town vibes, as I would say. Um, you should definitely visit if you're in the area. Just be mindful that the bridge is on a residential street. It's a dead end. Everyone there knows each other. If you show up late at night and start causing problems, they're going to call the cops on you. You're the outsider there. Just be respectful, and don't be too loud because like they're also trying to sleep. But that being said, that is the story of the Bunny Man. If you enjoyed this, definitely come back next week where I will be covering the Walney Road Hitchhiker, where it's another local road to me, um, another place that I have gone. And if you have any of your own stories, send them in. You can find me on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, all under Ivy Drinks Coffee. And until next time, this is Behind the Haunt.